This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
Latarullo called with a long whispered recital of new enormities on the part of the operators of the black market. He mentioned that the special Squadra Nucleo, organized by our vigilant Questore to act as a spearhead in the fight against corruption, had just been able to resolve a little problem for one of Naples' leading surgeons, who was already well known to us. It seemed that the doctor had managed to acquire a Fiat 1500, which turned out to have been stolen. In the ordinary way, the regular Pubblica Sicurezza would have dealt with this predicament at a cost to the doctor of about 50,000 lire. As it is, he had the new Squadra to deal with, and has had to pay heavily for their incorruptibility. In fact, 200,000 lire. Latarullo looked even weaker with hunger today than usual, and swayed from the waist, eyes closed, even when sitting down. After our chat, I decided to take him for a meal to one of the side street restaurants that have opened in the past few days. We walked out together and faced this city which is literally tumbling about our ears. Everywhere there were piles of masonry brought down by the air raids to be negotiated. Every few yards Latarullo had to stop to gather breath and strength. When we tried to take a shortcut through a familiar vico, we found it freshly blocked by the collapse of tenements and filled with rubble to a depth of 20 feet. There was a terrible stench of shattered drains, and possibly something worse, and the Middle Ages had returned to display all their deformities, their diseases, and their desperate trickeries. Hunchbacks are considered lucky, so they were everywhere, scuttling underfoot, and a buyer of the lottery tickets they offered for sale touched or stroked their humps as he made his purchase. A great collection of idiots and cretins included children propped against walls, nodding their big heads. A legless little bundle had been balanced behind a saucer into which a few lira notes and a sweet had been thrown. In a matter of 200 yards, I was approached 3 times by child pimps, and Latarullo, appropriately enough, was offered a cut-price coffin. The only food shops open were bakers, but they sold no bread, only sugary sweets, torrone and marzipan, all made with sugar stolen from the Allies, and fetching 30 lire for a tiny cube. We were stopped at a bottleneck caused by a collapsed building in the Vico Chiatamone, where a sanitary post had been set up, and here every passer-by was sprayed with a white powder against the typhus. We found the restaurant and took our seats among the middle-class patrons, who kept their overcoats on against the cold. All the coats were made from our stolen blankets. A choking deodorant disinfectant burning in a brazier set everybody coughing, but failed to cloak the smell of sewers seeping up through the flagstones. The ritual in this restaurant is for a waiter to appear and pass through the tables carrying on a dish what Latarullo calls the show fish, for the customers to inspect with murmurs of admiration. This had a good-looking head, but the body had already been cut up in portions and was therefore unidentifiable. As usual, there was a trick in it. Latarullo insisted on examining the fish and pointed out to me that the body didn't match the head, and from its triangular backbone evidently belonged to the dogfish family, which most people avoided eating if they could. The other recommended item on the menu was veal, Milanese style, very white but dry-looking, which the waiter, under pressure, admitted to being horse. We settled for macaroni. No attempt was made to isolate the customers from the street. Ragged, hawk-eyed boys, the celebrated scugnizzi of Naples, wandered among the tables ready to dive on any crust that appeared to be overlooked, or to snatch up leftovers before they could be thrown to the cats. Once again, I couldn't help noticing the intelligence, almost the intellectuality, of their expressions. No attempt was made to chase them away. They were simply treated as non-existent. The customers had withdrawn from the world while they communed with their food. An extraordinary cripple was dragged in, balancing face downwards on a trolley only a few inches from the ground, arms and legs thrust out in spider fashion. Nobody took his eyes off his food for 1 second to glance down at him. This youth could not use his hands. One of the scugnizzi hunted down a piece of bread for him, turned his head sideways to stuff it between his teeth, and he was dragged out. Suddenly, 5 or 6 little girls between the ages of 9 and 12 appeared in the doorway. They wore hideous straight black uniforms buttoned under their chins, and black boots and stockings, and their hair had been shorn short, prison style. They were all weeping, and as they clung to each other and groped their way towards us, bumping into chairs and tables, I realized they were all blind. Tragedy and despair